It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
So I've just finished reading a book, Kyle. It's called Get Married. Get Married is the name. Like just picking it up and looking at it. Get Married. It's a provocative title for a book. Get Married, by a University of Virginia sociologist. He's also the lead researcher on a project in the United States called the National Marriage Project. His name is Professor Brad Wilcox.
It's interesting that that's the title of his book when my understanding is that marriage numbers are declining.
They actually are across the Western world. Fewer people are getting married. Partnering is as popular as ever, but making the commitment to sign up for a lifetime of monogamy.
I thought you were going to say misery.
No, monogamy. In fact, here's the interesting thing about the book. The research shows that if you can have a happy, safe, supportive marriage, it's the golden ticket to happiness. It's one of the best predictors. In fact, it is the best predictor of happiness in our lives. Check this out. I found something, I'm just finding the stat here. The odds of being very happy increase by 64% if you have a college degree over those who don't. In other words, people who have a university degree are 64% more likely to be very happy than those without the degree. Oh, by the way, I should just highlight, I'm about to say a whole lot of provocative stuff. I'm not in a soapbox here. I'm just looking at pure stats, okay? It doesn't mean that if you don't have a university degree, you can't be happy. It just means that the odds of being very happy go up by 64% if you've got that degree. Plenty of people with degrees are miserable, and plenty of people without degrees are wonderfully happy. This is just on average, statistically, that's how it goes. Odds of being very happy with higher income increase by 88%. If you're very satisfied with your work, the odds of being very happy increase by 145% over those who are not happy with their work. The odds of being very happy increase by 151% if you're married over those who are not married. But get this, if you are in a very happy marriage compared to those who are not married or those who are not in a happy marriage, the odds of being very happy increase by 545%. Marriage predicts happiness better than education, better than work, better than money. It's an astounding stat.
So how do you do the maths on something like that?
It's a big number.
I'm struggling with my words because I'm actually looking at the graph, and when you look at it pictorially, you've got a teeny tiny little blue line down here for 64%. And then it's like having a, 200-story building right next to it. There's 545%, 545% better chance of being very happy.
So a simple way of looking at this is they simply ask people what their well-being is up to, and then they look at their various socio-demographic statistics. So are you married? Are you not married? What sort of education level do you have? All those kinds of things. And they literally just look at the odds of scoring in the very high range based on what those boxes are that you ticked. And so if you've ticked that box and said, I'm in a very happy marriage, the odds of you being very happy are 5.5 times greater than the likelihood of you being happy if you're not in a very happy marriage. That's it. It's actually pretty basic stats, but the truth of it is that we don't do maths very well, and we're really bad with probabilities. And as a result, when we look at these numbers, they can often not make much sense. The other thing is it's kind of a provocative and confronting thing to hear. Now, again, I want to emphasize there are people who are not in happy marriages that can be happy. There are people who are not married that are wonderfully happy. And I know plenty of married people who are kind of miserable as well.
Okay. Or people who've got lots of money.
Right. Okay. So this is not just about the one factor. What it's looking at, quite simply, very simply, is if you're in a good marriage, if you're in a very happy marriage, you're much more likely to be a happy person. So it's not about shaming anyone. It's not about judging anyone. It's not about pointing fingers and that sort of thing. These stats just point in that direction. Here's another stat for you while we're on it. Children who are raised in homes where parents are married are much more likely to go to university. They're much more likely to stay off drugs. They're much more likely to be financially stable. They're more likely to generally stay out of trouble. Intact families, just an enormous increase in the positive outcomes versus other families. Now, of course, there are plenty of kids that come from alternative and diverse families that have wonderful outcomes. It's just that you get more positive outcomes with intact families where a couple are happily married. One more stat. This is a really interesting one. People who are married tend to enjoy much greater financial benefits than those who are not, even if you're living in a live-in de facto relationship.
So I find this interesting because as parents with dependent children, it feels like the financial strain is intense.
Yeah. So a 2007 survey of consumer finance looked at the median net worth of households with children by family structure. And what they found was that the people who were doing the very best were married and intact. Median net worth, $228,200. Now, this data is 15 years old, but we see continued evidence of this. Married in a step family, that 228 drops down to 96,000. Divorced, 32,000. Cohabiting, 8,900. I mean, the number just drops precipitously from that 228,000. Again, this is net worth, and we're going back 15 years. But what research does show is that men who are married earn 27% more than when they're unmarried. Net worth of both individuals is higher. They accumulate more assets. They retire wealthier than their unmarried peers. It's the elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it. And I'm sensitive to the fact that it's a tricky topic. But the data is really, really clear. When we look at the very biggest research projects across time, they conclusively point to marriage as being fundamental to positive outcomes, well-being, a life well lived.
So today we're going to talk about 5 mistakes we want to avoid within our relationships so that we can have very happy marriages.
So the first one is the me first mindset. Me first mindset is pretty much talking about being selfish. It's basically saying, I'm not considering you. It's kryptonite to a marriage. So I'll use a stereotypical example. A husband who feels like he's entitled to a clean house and a dinner on the table every night and intimacy on an as-needs basis.
I think it could be even more simpler than that, though. A husband who goes to work and his wife stays at home and looks after a brand new baby, but just expects that his job is outside of the house and her job's inside the house.
Yeah, or even worse, a husband who goes to work and a wife who goes to work, but he still thinks that she's going to carry the lion's share of the labour in terms of keeping the house maintained and that kind of thing.
And the mental load.
Yeah, so it's just this, essentially it's a selfishness, like I'll look after me and you look after everything else. Maybe it's endlessly pursuing a goal at the expense of the relationship. Whatever it is, regardless of the scenario, selfishness subsumes any goodwill and it raises resentment and crushes the companionship. There's another example of me first mindsets as well, and that is when somebody tries to mold their husband or wife into their perfect version of who they want them to be or who they think they would be as well. Like, I'm an outgoing person. If I'm constantly trying to get you to be outgoing and you're not an outgoing person, I'm trying to mold you into my perfect version of me because I think I'm awesome and I think that's how life should be. But it's not going to work because I'm failing to understand your hopes and dreams and goals, not just for life, but maybe just for the next 5 minutes while we're introducing ourselves to these people. And if we can't calibrate it appropriately, that selfishness causes a relationship to come undone.
That's why we just do so well together. We're so different, but I actually think while we haven't tried to change each other, we've inadvertently taken on some of each other's traits. And I used to be really shy. I didn't used to kind of get out there.
In the early days, I was selfish and just thought that you needed to be like me.
Well,
but I love your differences to me now. I just cherish them and celebrate them now.
But you bounce off the walls all the time. And so my nice quiet has kind of calmed you down a little bit over time.
Maybe just a bit.
Just a bit?
Yeah. I don't know if that's you or it's just me getting older and feeling more tired. But either way, let's look at number 2.
Number 2 is the maybe I do mindset.
Okay, this one is basically about commitment. People who question commitment create conditions that are going to develop into a lack of trust. If I don't feel like you're fully committed, then I'm not going to invest as much. And this is a really provocative thing to say. I recognize this, but it's based on solid evidence from one researcher in particular. His name is Scott Stanley. He's done some work with Galena Rhodes, Howard Markman. These guys have been looking at this thing called the cohabitation effect since the 1980s. And what their research shows is that when people slide into a relationship rather than decide to get into a relationship, commitment levels are lower, which means that investment levels are lower, which means that trust levels are lower. And the corollary, reduced commitment, reduced trust, poorer relationship quality. This is the maybe I do mindset, and it seems to backfire in terms of having a healthy relationship.
A couple of weeks ago, we shared our story on Valentine's Day, how we met and the things that made up our relationship. And you shared a story about our early days in that first year. We had an altercation at some point, and I kind of looked at you and said, well, if you feel like that, maybe we should just get divorced and, save each other a whole heap of trouble. And at that point, you acknowledged that that was a conversation that we would never have again, that divorce wasn't it's
not a word we'll say, and it's not an option in this relationship because we do treat each other well and we can just figure this stuff out.
And I think that changed something in both of us as we recognized that we were in this for good and bad, that there were going to be challenging times, but we were completely committed to one another and to the relationship that we were creating.
It makes such a difference when we have a strong commitment rather than a maybe I do mindset. So number one, the me first mindset, guaranteed to undermine and harm your marriage. Number two, the maybe I do mindset. The third thing, number three, expecting a soulmate marriage. No such thing as a soulmate. Got to get over the idea that there's a soulmate. If you think that a relationship is about intense emotion and romantic connection, it's almost certain that you're going to be crushed at some point when the emotion subsides and the romantic connection dims. The best research that I found in this shows that if you're expecting a soulmate marriage, you should be prepared for a new relationship sometime in the future because soulmates simply don't exist. It's fine to have a whole lot of romance and togetherness happening, but relationships are also about children and commitment and financial stuff. And
hard stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Hard stuff.
And you usually find that your soulmate isn't quite the person that you thought that they were when the rubber hits the road, when randomness and volatility start to hit you.
Having been through 25 years together.
Hey, excuse me, 25 years. Can I just mention this? We have approximately 13 days until it's 26 years.
I know, but we're still at 25.
Okay, all right, fine.
What we have experienced is that beautiful ebb and flow of life together. And sometimes things are cruising and we feel like we're flying on cloud nine. And other times we feel like we're in the depths of, I don't know, some swamp in the middle of nowhere. It gets really, really hard. But having that absolute knowledge that you're as committed to the relationship as I am means that we can work through that and recognize and know that we're not going to stay down in that swamp forever, that there's going to be another mountain peak and we're going to enjoy life again together.
Number 4, failure to connect. If you want to harm your marriage, just stop connecting. Connection means seeing, hearing, valuing. Technology interferes, priorities compete, life gets really busy.
Babies.
You get exhausted. Intimate quality declines, not for everyone, but for many people. The amount of effort you put in reduces because you've got to put effort into so many other places. Date night disappears, and all of our best intentioned efforts start to fail because of just running a life gets in the way. Failure to connect is a guaranteed way to harm your marriage. Got to find ways, got to find times, got to find the capacity to prioritize and see, hear, and value one another.
I think the magic word here is intention.
I'd go further. It's not just about having the intention, it's actually putting it into action. I intend to connect with you, but I get busy. Intention isn't quite far enough. There's that old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You can intend to do this and intend to do that. I think it actually requires action. It requires connection and commitment, and that's what makes the marriage work. If you want to harm your marriage, just focus on intention rather than action.
Well, number 5 is being around others who don't value marriage.
You want to hear some crazy stats? This is from a researcher named Rosenquist and colleagues who said this in one of their studies. They found that the likelihood of divorce increased by 75% for individuals with a divorced friend. Let me say that again. If your friends are divorced, your chances of divorce go up by 75%. Some other researchers, McPherson and colleagues, found that this effect extends to friends of friends. So if you are 1 degree of separation removed from the divorcee, you're still at a 33% higher chance of divorce. So there's this ripple effect. There's a divorce contagion. You might even call it divorce ideation, where within social circles, there's going to be some influence on attitudes and behaviors well beyond just the people involved in the divorce. Friends and even friends of friends are at increased risk of divorce.
I remember just after I finished high school, I caught up with one of my high school teachers. I absolutely idolized this woman. She was amazing and she was so instrumental in me in just getting through year 12, but loving my class with her. And you and I were engaged by that stage, but I was going through a little bit of an epiphany in my own life. And I had never had someone believe in me the way you did. I started dreaming about who I could be and what I could achieve in my life based on the conversations you and I had had. And the struggle I was having was, if I wanted to achieve those things, I couldn't see how I could achieve them and have a family. They were not congruent where I wanted to go, or where I thought I wanted to go, and where I had committed to go. We caught up one afternoon for afternoon tea, and I was sharing just how excited I was about getting married and all of the things that are associated with that. And as the conversation continued, I found myself sharing with her this newfound confidence that I had. She was my teacher, so she knew the person I was previous. And so she could see this growth in me that had occurred, in a sense, because of my relationship with you. You had provided me with a belief in me that I had never experienced before. And so the confidence that I had in what I could do with my life, like, just blew out of the water. And so as I was sharing all of these dreams and goals and things that aspirations that I was thinking about, she looked at me and she said, "Kylie, why would you ever want to get married?" She said, "Look at you. You've got your whole world ahead of you. You could be any one of those things. Why would you trap yourself in a relationship and minimize your capacity?" And I just remember walking away from that and feeling so deeply saddened by the conversation I had. It actually confirmed to me that while all of those other places would have given me life experience that I will never experience, I would never have experienced the joy and the connection and the love and security that I've experienced in the life that I have created with you.
Marriage matters. It may not be a popular thing to say. The research points in that direction, and certainly our experience does, but it's about having a good marriage as well. It's about working on it, being committed, and figuring out how you can avoid those mistakes that harm marriage the most. If you were to cut through the noise, it's not just about happily ever after fantasies. It's about real world benefits, and the data points to financial security, better outcomes for kids. Look, it's not for everyone. I'm actually going to say that. Marriage is not for everyone, and there are good reasons for some people to not be married. But marriage isn't just about a piece of paper. It's a foundation for a life of meaning and joy and purpose and growth. So I think that we need to champion marriage, especially as marriage starts to decline. We've got evidence that it's doing that. We need to celebrate its merits and support those who choose a marriage path. It's time to prioritise the gold standard and reap the rewards. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rule from Bridge Media. For more information about how you can make your family happier and your marriage stronger, visit happyfamilies.com.au.